So good morning, everyone. Welcome to the presentation for the University of Alberta. I say good morning. It is morning here where I am in Edmonton, but I'll say good afternoon or good evening to those of you that might be in other time zones. And again, I just wanted to welcome you to the presentation and thank you for joining us today. And I'm really excited to be here and to be able to tell you a little bit about the University of Alberta. Now, I'm not really sure those of you who are participating, whether some of you may or may not already have applied, or whether or not you're interested in potentially doing a master's or PhD in our graduate programs. But I did want to just specify that the focus of this presentation is on undergraduate studies, on our undergraduate programs, and that if you are interested in other programs or potentially getting information about your current registration or a current application of any kind, you can feel free to send an email to the email address that will be listed at the end of the presentation. So just to get a few little things out of the way right at the beginning. And I can give you information about how to find information on grad studies at the end as well. So my name is Joanna Gill, and I'm one of the recruitment coordinators for the University of Alberta. My region that I specifically cover is Asia, pretty much all the countries that are outside of China. But I have recruited in other regions before, so I do know a little bit about some of the other countries and the curricula that are there. So do feel free, if you have questions during the program, to just type those, and I'll be able to address those at the end in the question and answer period. And as I mentioned, we're looking at the undergraduate program, so looking at things about what happens after you apply as well. So in case you're not exactly familiar with where we're located, we are, as I mentioned, in Edmonton, and that is the capital city of the province of Alberta, located in Western Canada. So one of the questions that I actually do get asked a lot is, how close are you to Toronto, or how close are you to Vancouver? We're actually fairly close to Vancouver by air flight, so if you were to land in Vancouver, you would only need to fly for about another hour and a half before you get to Edmonton. But if you're in Toronto, it's actually going to be about another 5 hours if you're on a direct flight from Toronto. It's a little bit farther away, approximately 3,000 or 3,500 kilometers. I sometimes joke that it takes me about the same amount of time and money to actually fly directly to Mexico City as it does for me to fly to Toronto from Edmonton. So just kind of a little funny tidbit. Some general information about Canada that you may or may not know. We do tend to rank fairly highly on development indices, and are kind of generally known for our high quality education system, as well as being a culturally diverse place. And you may have heard, or you may already have the belief that we are a welcoming community or a welcoming country, and I do believe that that's true. A lot of the international students that we meet would definitely agree to that, and would say that they have felt very welcome in Canada and in Edmonton as well. And just in case you were wondering who designed our Canadian maple leaf flag, it was actually designed by one of our alumni, a man by the name of George Stanley, who graduated a number of years ago. Alberta itself is known as Canada's energy province. That is because we have the second largest oil reserves in the world in our oil sands in northern Alberta. And as a result, we have an extremely strong economy, so it's great for if you're looking for jobs. And also things like internships or things like that. You're going to be able to find the kinds of part-time jobs and internship opportunities or cooperative education opportunities that you might be looking for during your undergraduate program. We also have a lot of really great natural beauty as well. So I used to actually do recruitment just for Canadian students within Alberta, and I used to get to drive across the province. And it was one of my favorite things that I ever got to do, because I really got to appreciate the diversity of the topography of our province. We've got forests in the north, we've got prairies to the east, we have desert to the south, and we have beautiful mountains to the west. So there's lots of things to do, and if you really want to have a great outdoor experience, whether it's camping or hiking, skiing, whitewater rafting, or trying any of those kinds of activities, you're going to be able to find something like that in the province of Alberta. And within Edmonton itself, as I mentioned, we're the capital. In the greater metropolitan area, we've got around 1 million people. So that is actually considered to be a fairly large city by Canadian standards. We only actually have 4 cities that are larger than us, which are Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, and Calgary. And we are generally a major economic hub as a result of our location and being in Alberta for one, and also being the capital. And we're also a very diverse and multicultural place as well. One of my favorite festivals that we have, and you'll see there that we're known as Canada's Festival City, because we do have more festivals per capita than any other city in the country. My favorite one is the Heritage Days Festival, which is a festival that celebrates multiculturalism in our city. And typically we have over 65 different cultures represented in that festival, and the only reason they can't have more is because the park isn't big enough to hold more people or more tents to represent those cultures. So it's a really, really great festival, and as a result we have a lot of awesome restaurants from different cultures, and we have even grocery stores and grocery supplies for things that you might be able to find back in your home country. So really, really wonderful place to live for those kinds of things. For the university itself, we're just over 100 years old. We were founded in 1908. We're ranked as one of the world's top 100 universities, and within Canada, we are considered to be one of Canada's top 5 research universities. We actually receive pretty much more funding dollars than any other university in Canada, except for the University of Toronto. So as a result, it gives us a lot of really great facilities, and it also allows us to offer a huge variety of programs. You'll see that we have over 200 undergraduate programs, as well as 170 graduate programs, spread across several faculties, and comprising a population of over 39,000 students. So it's a large, comprehensive university. Sometimes it's surprising to students who may not know that much about the Canadian education system, but we do have universities like this, and we're definitely very proud that we get to be one of them here at the U of A. We actually do have 5 campuses. 2 of them currently don't offer any courses. One of them is the office that I work in. It's our downtown campus known as Enterprise Square. And one of them is South Campus, which currently has recreational facilities and the university farm. But the other 3 campuses we do have are Augustana, North Campus, and Campus Saint-Jean, which is our French-speaking campus. And you can actually see North Campus pictured right here. It's a fairly large campus that takes up about 50 city blocks. And just another aerial view so you can get a sense of where different buildings are located on campus at North Campus. And you'll notice some of the beautiful fall colors there taken in probably around September. As for the different faculties at the U of A, I mean, you can obviously read them yourself, but so I won't go into great detail about every single one of them. But one of the faculties, or a few of the faculties that I'll point out, as I mentioned, we do have the other faculty locations known as Saint-Jean and Augustana. So Saint-Jean offers the opportunity for you to do an entire degree in French, or a bilingual degree, which is a portion of the program will be offered in French and a portion in English, which you can do in nursing, business, and engineering. And then with Augustana, that's actually our liberal arts campus, and it's not located in Edmonton like North Campus and Campus Saint-Jean, or actually all of our other campuses. It's located in a town called Camrose. So it's a beautiful small campus in a small town. Camrose has around 15,000 residents, and Augustana itself has approximately 1,000 students located there. And they do offer that true liberal arts experience. And so if you're looking for some really unique programs in a small campus, it could be the right setting for you. They have some really, really interesting things that you can do there that you can't do at North Campus, and vice versa. So it's just about finding the right fit for you and what you think will work best for your goals and for your career aspirations. One of the differences with Augustana as well is that it's an undergraduate only faculty. So they don't actually have any master's or PhD students or programs there. So if you are looking at potentially having a research assistantship or getting the types of opportunities that are sometimes only available to graduate students at a university, you can actually have those experiences at Augustana because there are no grad students there for you to actually compete with. So that's something that's really interesting. 2 other faculties that I'll point out are the School of Public Health and Rehabilitation Medicine. Those actually only offer graduate programs. So if you're looking at doing a bachelor's degree in something like physical therapy or occupational therapy, or if you're looking at doing a public health program, you can only do those at a master's or PhD level here at the U of A. You wouldn't be able to do your undergraduate degree. And the other two faculties that I'll point out are Extension, which is our continuing education faculty. So those are non-credit programs that are offered there. So those aren't typically what you would be looking for as an undergraduate student, but they do also offer our English language program. So if you're looking at studying English as a second language, or just improving on your English skills, you could take English there. And the Graduate Studies and Research faculty as well, that's actually an umbrella faculty for all of our graduate programs. So they don't actually offer degrees in that faculty, but they're just sort of the overarching administrative body for the graduate programs, and they help to support and provide some structure for that. So just a few that are important to point out so that you kind of understand how the faculties work at our university. And as I mentioned, we do have some really great facilities as a result of being such a large research university with a lot of funding dollars. So a couple of the buildings that I'll point out, we have the National Institute for Nanotechnology. So if you are interested in doing nanotechnology, you probably want to consider coming to the U of A. The facility itself, it's actually one of only 5 like it in the world. It's the only facility like it in Canada. It's apparently known to be one of the most quietest places on earth, and that's just because if you're familiar with nanotechnology at all, you'll know that even the sound of a voice can actually create enough vibrations in the air to actually ruin an experiment or something like that. So it's a really, really interesting place to be. And we've also got the Centennial Center for Interdisciplinary Science, which is for our Faculty of Science, and it's meant to be a very collaborative type of space and allow a lot of interdisciplinary types of work to take place. Beautiful building, so if you get a chance to go there, even if you're not a science student, but you just want to go and see the building once you're on campus, I strongly recommend doing so because it's a very, very nice building to be in. And one of the other buildings that I'll point out, or the facilities, is actually pictured here in the slide. It's the Tim Centre for the Arts, and it's actually known to be Canada's best theatre training facility. We actually have one of the best theatre programs in the country, and so if you're looking at doing, whether it's drama or doing the acting route or something like technical theatre or something like that, you should strongly consider the U of A, as the City of Edmonton itself has a very, very strong connection with the theatre arts. We have more theatre companies per capita than all of the other cities in Canada, and there's a lot of support for that here in the Edmonton community, so it's a great place to be for that, and we're very proud to have this professional facility on our campus. So, what can you do outside of studying 24/7? Because we obviously want you to have a good work-life balance. There's lots of different clubs that you can join. We actually have over 200 student clubs. We have 25 different varsity teams, which are represented by the Golden Bears and the Pandas, and the Golden Bears are our men's teams, and the Pandas are our women's teams. And so whether you want to play on one or if you just want to go and see the games and support the teams, either of those are available to you. And there's lots of things to do in Edmonton too, and because of the universities, at least at North Campus and Campus Saint-Jean, when you're on the campus location, it's centrally located in Edmonton, so it's really great. It's super accessible to public transportation, and so you can go downtown to go to the art theaters and galleries, and to go to the theater and to see concerts and things like that. So it's really, really accessible through public transportation, or in the summertime if you do want to walk or take your bike, you can do that as well. So there's lots of really great ways to socialize and have fun on campus. And there's tons of volunteer opportunities as well. You'll see in the picture here this big group of volunteers from the International Center, and I think they're probably all peer leaders who help new international students make the transition to the university. So once you're already here, if you want to volunteer in that, you can do that, or there's hundreds and hundreds of other volunteer opportunities on campus as well. So someone did ask if there is campus accommodation, and we definitely do have that. We've got 8 different student residences, and 11 student residences, and there's different kinds of them as well. We've got everything from the very dorm style accommodation, which includes a meal plan and is pretty much fully furnished, all the way to an apartment style, which you would have to furnish yourself, and which would allow you to, you would do all of your own grocery shopping and cooking and things like that. So there's different choices that you can make. There's lots of great residences out there. And it's guaranteed for you as well as an international student. So we do have a deadline of April 30 every year. So as long as you've applied for your residence by that time, you will actually be guaranteed a spot on campus. Now, it's not required for you to live on campus unless you're living at or studying at Augustana. They require you to live there in your first year, but if you choose not to live in residence, that is actually up to you as well. And the great thing again about being centrally located is that we are surrounded by residential areas, and so there's always apartments and basement suites and rooms and houses and things like that for rent. So if you did choose to live off campus, you could definitely do so, but a lot of students will live there for at least their first year, and then they meet people, make friends, and then they might choose to live off campus together and rent a place together. So that's really up to you. And just to continue, someone had a quick question about whether the residence is included in the tuition, and it actually isn't. You will have a separate cost for your residence versus your tuition costs. So toward the end, I'll actually have a cost estimate of how much you can expect to pay for the various costs, and then you'll be able to see a total package estimate and determine whether or not it'll be affordable for you. In terms of scholarships, you're probably wondering if we have them. We definitely do. Pretty much all of the scholarships that are available to domestic students are also available to international students as well. And we have around $25 million of scholarships that we have available to give away every year. So that's something that's really great. Most of them are actually automatic consideration. There are a few that you would need to apply for, but you could go to our website, which I'll post at the end, and you'll be able to find scholarship information there as well. So yeah, it's a really great opportunity. So most of them are pretty much merit-based as well, so basically meaning that the higher the grades you have, the more scholarships you can be offered. Yeah, so here was that estimate that I was talking about. You can see here that there's an approximate estimate of around $20,000 a year Canadian for your tuition. And then depending on the kind of accommodation that you have, whether it's shared, whether it's a private apartment, things like that, you can see cost estimates there. Now, some people ask me if it's more expensive to live off campus than on campus or vice versa. To be quite honest, it's approximately the same amount. Everything will vary, of course, depending on whether or not, how much you like to eat, or whether you need to buy everything organic, or things like that. So there's some individual factors that will determine how much you can spend on those types of things. But I would definitely recommend that if you are trying to save money, that you do opt for the shared accommodations, because that will definitely help you save more money in the end, even if it's just on rent, if not food. And then the other estimate. So you'll notice, for example, that there's no cost for a bus pass, and that's because that is included in your student fees. So you can access all of the public transportation without having to pay an additional fee for your bus pass. One thing that I will note with the tuition and fees as well, though, is that this estimate was based on last year, and this year the university has increased the tuition slightly, but they haven't actually finalized the amount. So you could expect to see an increase of a couple of $1,000s on tuition in addition to what the cost is that you see here. So just to give you a little bit of warning that if you are looking for future costs and trying to make those financial estimates, just to be aware that the cost will go up a couple of $1,000s or approximately within the next year or two. So how do you actually get started? Once you actually decide that you want to apply to the UVA, what do you need to do? Well, if you are still considering applying for somewhere for September 2014, we actually are still accepting applications. We have a later deadline than a lot of other universities, and so for all of our direct entry programs, you can actually apply by May 1st in order to still be considered for admission for September 2014. Now, the housing application or the housing guarantee still applies, So it is April 30th, which means that if you do want to be considered for accommodation, you should apply as soon as possible. The reason for that is that once you submit your online application, it can take up to 2 days to process that application and to actually get an acknowledgement with your student identification number and all those sorts of information that will allow you to connect to your account and things like that. So you will need your student ID number to actually apply for your residence. So just to make sure that you give yourself enough time if you're actually still considering that. But do be aware that we accept different international curricula. I actually had a student from one country the other day who for some reason thought that the university didn't accept any students from his country, and he seemed really upset about it. So don't feel like, you know, if you're from a certain country, we're not going to recognize you or your curriculum or things like that. If you're not really sure, or if you want to understand more about how we would assess your background or your education, do just send us an email and we'll be able to help you with those kinds of questions. And then again, you don't actually have to make a final decision right away about what you want to study. So there are particular programs like engineering or nursing where you do kind of need to know right off the bat that this is what I want to pursue. You can definitely switch later, but some of those programs are harder to switch into. You don't necessarily get transfer credits, and some of them have limited spots for transfer students. But if you're looking at something like arts or science or something more general, you actually can often take up until the end of your second year to make the choice about your major or minor. So don't worry that if you're not really sure what you want to do right now, that you have to already, know for sure. You can actually take your time and explore a few different kinds of courses once you're here and see what actually appeals to you. So this is actually from our website. There's some screenshots here of how to find information. So you can go to our website, studyincanada.ualberta.ca, and you can click on the Study at UAlberta tab to find out more information. Or you can click on a link such as Programs and Admissions to find out what are all the exact programs that we offer and what you need to actually get into those programs. And then you can look at, what would you like to study once you're in Programs and Admissions. They're sorted by faculty, by subject area, so you can find out information about that. If you scroll down that page, you can find often information related to your particular curriculum. There's also a PDF document that you can just download to get a list of all of the different credentials that we require. So let's say you're from Vanuatu and you want to know how you can get into the university. They'll let you know what the high school credential is from Vanuatu that we would need as a minimum for you to be considered for the university, or if you're from Togo, or if you're from Brazil. So there's a whole bunch of different, there's a huge long list actually of the different types of high school curricula that we do recognize and the minimums that we require. And then you can search our undergraduate programs either by keyword or faculty. So I know sometimes in different countries, certain types of programs can be called different things. For example, computer science in Canada or at the U of A is specifically a very programming, machine learning, database, SQL, those types, it's very specific. Whereas sometimes in other countries, computing science can also be called computer engineering, and that's actually a very different program here at the U of A. So you might want to look by keywords or subject words, just so that you can more accurately find the kind of program you're looking for. And again, even if you can't, that's why you contact us directly, and we can help you to find that information. And again, you want to make sure that you're checking the program requirements and deadlines. So the requirements will vary by program. I often get asked, like, so what do I need to get into a university? And I wish it were as simple as that. I wish I could just say, hey, if you had X, Y, and Z, you can get into all our programs. But it doesn't work that way. So some are really specific, like engineering. They need specific courses like physics, chemistry, and calculus for you to be eligible for them. But if you're looking at something like an arts program, those are really general. And you'll for sure need to have, a high school English class at a senior level. But depending on the program you choose, most of them don't really have any other specific requirements. There's a very wide variety of types of subjects that they'll accept for admission into the Faculty of Arts. So make sure that you check those out. And you can see that there's an example of the Bachelor of Arts in front of you, and you can see that there, the amount of variation that's there. And the deadlines, as I mentioned, are already, I already mentioned those. It's May 1st, so if you are still considering applying for somewhere for this September, there's still some time left for you to do that. and then just submit your application online. I know that sometimes you might feel motivated to send in a paper application, but we do strongly recommend the online application because the paper application actually does take a long time to process. So once you mail or fax it in, it can actually take several weeks for somebody in the admissions office to manually upload that into our system. Whereas, as I mentioned before, if you actually submit the application online, that can actually be processed within our system within 48 hours, and you'll receive automatic emails from the university to verify your email address and things like that. So we strongly recommend and encourage you to do the online system. And I know that you might be concerned about not having a credit card to pay for the application. It's a $115 application fee for this year. But if you are if you have a parent or somebody who can lend you their credit card, or who would pay for that for you, and you can always pay them the cash back, something like that, that's definitely an option. We don't need your name to be on that credit card, as long as whoever's credit card you're using has approved for you to use that. That works as well. And then after you have applied, these are the things that you actually need to be able to do. You should check your emails. So when you apply, make sure that you use a valid email address, because you're going to receive a series of emails, automatically generated emails from the university, that do include things like your CCID, which is your Campus Computing ID, and that actually allows you to access your Beartrax account and your U of A email address. It'll include your 7-digit student ID number and login information for your U of A account, as I mentioned, for your email. So you want to make sure that the email address you use is valid, and do check your spam folder as well. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen all the time, but from time to time, sometimes one of the emails that you receive will actually go into your spam folder, and then if you don't notice that, for example, with your CCID and password, they give you a certain period within which to log in and change your password to something that you want to remember. But if you don't do that within a certain time, then your account is suspended until you contact our IT department to get it reinstated. So there can just be some extra logistical complications. So just try to make sure that you're keeping up to date. And then once you have actually verified your email address, do note that all of the automatically generated emails that you'll get from the admissions office or from many of the offices on campus that might be contacting you will actually go to your University of Alberta email address. So sometimes students actually miss out on important information because they're only checking their personal accounts and they're not checking their U of A email account. And it's really, really important to check that on a regular basis just to make sure you're not missing deadlines or things. In fact, earlier this year, I even met a student who didn't know she was admitted to the university because she hadn't checked her U of A email account. So you don't want to miss out on important information like that, definitely. All right. And then make sure that after you've applied, if there do happen to be any scholarships left to apply for, that you do do that. Now, in this case, our application-based scholarships that we have available, they're no longer, the deadline's already passed for this coming September. But if you're planning to apply for September 2015 or a year after that, then obviously those scholarships will still be available, and they're most likely going to be available for download in November or December of 2014. So do wait for that time period. And again, as I mentioned, apply to live on campus. So if you're looking at applying for this September, make sure that you apply soon, and then apply for your housing as soon as you get your ID number, just so that you don't miss out on that deadline. And then after you've applied, you want to make sure that you've applied for your study permit. And that means as soon as you receive, if you are considered for early admission or if you're given final admission, make sure that you apply for your study permit as soon as possible. A lot of times the study permit, the visa offices, they do get bombarded with applications in July. So the earlier you apply for those as well, the faster service that you can receive, because at that point the visa office isn't as overwhelmed with the volume of applications. So, and also too, some countries just take longer than others as well. So you do want to make sure that you give yourself sufficient time. There may be documentation that you have to collect, and there's things like medicals, and for some countries there's also police security checks. So all of those things can be very time consuming. I know last year too there were issues with some students from Islamic countries who would be observing Ramadan, and there were offices that were actually closed when they needed to get certain kinds of documentation. So do make sure that you give yourself sufficient time for all of the kinds of paperwork that you need. And you can actually monitor the status of your application on the Bear Track system as well. So just make sure that you log into that from time to time to check for updates and things as well. And then this is just the brief overview on how to apply. So I've already covered a lot of that information today. So we kind of had the step-by-step there in terms of just the screenshots from our website on where you can find the information that you need, scholarships and admissions requirements and things like that, and applying for study permit. And then again, make sure that you check out our guide. So when you go to our website, thestudyincanada.ualberta.ca, there's a link that says how to apply that you can click on. And when you click on the undergraduate program, step number 4, which as you can see in here also says submit your interim documents for early admission. The documentation link is very helpful because it lets you know how and where to send the documents. So for early admission purposes, we allow scans, and so that will give you the link for where you can go to upload your documents to be considered for early admission, and then it also gives you the address you need for any of the hard copy documents that you need to send. So just make sure that you're aware of those kinds of things. And again, I know that the information can be overwhelming and there's a lot of it and it might be confusing, or you might not find it as user-friendly as you would hope. So in case any of that kind of situation happens, the email address that is in front of you, the welcome@international.ualberta.ca, is the one that you can email. The main reason that we have a general email address is that those of us who recruit, we actually do cover different regions of the world. So that way, if you send an email to the one general email address, the person who monitors that email, she can forward your inquiry to the appropriate person who has the experience and the expertise with your region. So I know sometimes when I get emails from a country like I've never been there, or I don't really know anything about their curriculum, it can be very challenging for me to answer the question. And so I have to forward it to somebody else who has more expertise. So it saves a little bit of time when you can contact the person directly who is most appropriate for your region. And as it mentions here, if you've applied, do remember to include your 7-digit student ID if you can do that, just because when we are answering questions or if we do need to look up information, it helps us to find you better. Sometimes students don't include even their names when they send emails, and so they'll say, well, can you check on my file, but I don't even know what your name is, and so it can be challenging to find that information. So if you have your 7-digit student ID number included, I can easily access the system and I can find the information that you need, and it just helps us to be more efficient in helping you get the information that you need. And you can chat with us live after this webinar, and in fact I think some people already started chatting about an hour ago. So continue to ask your questions on the live chat. As I mentioned, if you do have very specific questions, you may wish to send an email to someone, but you can do the live chat, and I myself will be logging in after our question and answer period is over, and I'll be chatting for a little while as well. And in the meantime, again, there's our website, and I will go to our Q&A session, and I'll answer some of the questions that you've asked here. So someone from India is asking what kind of financial aid or scholarship. So I did mention that there are some of those scholarships available. Unfortunately, because they're all sort of based on your grades and what programs you apply to, I can't really give a good quality estimate as to how much you can potentially qualify for. But there's definitely a lot available if you have done particular types of curricula, like an IB or an AP program. Sometimes there's additional scholarship monies available as well. So definitely do go to the scholarships section of our website and check on that information. And as I mentioned, those are going to be automatic consideration anyway. So once you apply to the university and submit your interim documents, you'll be considered for those scholarships right off the bat. So that's something that's really great. Someone is also asking if there's an option for students to start in January. The answer to that is yes and no. Most of our programs do not have January admissions. The only two faculties that currently admit students into January are Augustana campus, so the liberal arts campus that I was mentioning that's located in Camrose, and the other one is affectionately known as AILS. It's the Agricultural Life and Environmental Sciences program. I think the only exception to that is the nutrition program. But if you're looking at doing an environmental science program or something like human ecology where you can look at family studies, or a program such as clothing and textiles, all of those programs will admit students for January, but it is limited. So yeah, just be aware that if you're looking to start in January, you may or may not have that option depending on what program you want to do. The same person would also like to know if we check your backgrounds from high school. We do check them. We want to see continuity of certain types of courses that you've taken. So, did you take, for example, you want to do engineering and you need physics. Did you take physics from grades 10 through 12? Or if you didn't, did you do an AP or an IB physics course or something like that? We will only base your admission on the grades from your grade 12 or the equivalent of grade 12. For example, in some countries such as Peru, they go up to grade 11, so that's fine. We use that grade 11 year. We only check the average based on that senior year of high school. But in terms of the subjects that we're looking for, we do want to make sure that you have a history of taking those courses in your high school career. So we will do that background check. Now, something that is new this year that the university started was we will actually admit students based on their grade 11 final results. So in that sense, if you are interested in early admission, we will use your grade 11 results or your middle year results from high school to consider you for early admission. But in terms of your final admission average, we will calculate that based only on your senior most year of school. So you don't have to worry that if you got a bad grade in 10th grade or something like that. We don't really care about that. As long as you're kind of generally not failing and you've got that continuity, that's something that's more important to us. So someone's asking that they're saying that they have a pending TOEFL test and they're wondering if they can apply. Yeah, you definitely can. Something that is often can be confusing to applicants is the May 1st deadline. So they think they've got to have everything in by that time. You don't actually have to have all your documents in by that time. We distinguish between what we call an application deadline versus a document deadline. So May 1st is the deadline by which you need to apply to study at the university for September admission. But in terms of submitting all of your final documentation, you actually have until August 1st to submit all of that. So that gives you extra time if you haven't taken a TOEFL exam or an IELTS exam or something like that. That'll give you the extra time that you need. And I'm just going to check another question here. So yeah, the same person was wondering, do they have any chance to be admitted if they didn't quite meet the TOEFL or IELTS requirement? Unfortunately, there's no way to be admitted directly into the program of study. However, we do have a number of faculties such as Science, Arts, Augustana, AILS, Native Studies, and did I mention Science? I think those are the general major faculties that I can think of. Those programs actually participate in something called the bridging program. So for students who actually meet all of our academic subject requirements, they have a sufficient average, they've taken the right subjects to get into our programs, but they just don't quite meet the English language proficiency requirement, we actually can give them the option called the bridging program. And what this allows students to do is to be able to take English as a second language courses at the same time as taking some of their academic courses. And so your admission letter will actually read that you've been admitted to the bridging program. So when you go to apply, and actually so to your program, but in conjunction with the bridging program. So you'll still have, it'll still look like a 4 to 5 year program. So when you go to apply for your study permit, you won't have any issues of them wondering, well, why are you going just to study English? You're only going to be there for 6 months or a year, and that could potentially be problematic. Depending on who's evaluating your application. But in this case, you were actually accepted to the program. You're going to be admitted directly into it on the condition that you pass your ESL classes, but it does give you an additional option to be considered for your program without technically meeting the language proficiency requirements right away. So that's just something good to know about. You can actually find information about the bridging program, how it works, and some more technical information about it right on our website as well. So do make sure that you go, and if you can't exactly find it, just Google bridging program on the university's main website, and it'll be the first link that comes up, and you'll be able to find more information about that. So I think outside of that, I don't see tons more questions coming in at the moment. So I will talk about a few other things that weren't covered into greater detail in the presentation. You might be interested in learning more about working. You may have heard, or you might have learned a little bit of information about working in Canada. You can definitely work while you're in the country. So our Canadian government has made it fairly easy, I guess, for international students to work in Canada. They will actually allow you to work for up to 20 hours a week. And basically, as soon as you arrive on campus or arrive in Canada on your study permit, you're going to be allowed to work on campus. Now, something new, in the past, you had to be in Canada for 6 months before you were allowed to work off campus. Initially, you could only work on campus for the first 6 months that you were in Canada. Now, apparently, they've changed that. If you go to the Canadian immigration website, they will actually provide an update or give you more direct information about that. But basically, as soon as you arrive in Canada, once you're studying at a university or at a school, you'll be able to work for 20 hours a week on or off campus. So that's a great opportunity for you to get some Canadian work experience. It helps to make some extra pocket money as well. You should be aware that that extra money will not be enough to pay for your tuition. You just simply wouldn't have the time or the wages to be able to make a lot to pay for your tuition, but it'll definitely help to offset the costs of things like your accommodations and food or your books or some of those additional things, or even just kind of for having fun. Like maybe you want to take a weekend trip to the mountains and you're going to have to pay the cost of staying in a cabin or a hotel or something like that. So it's definitely helpful for that, and it's also great for a resume as well. So when you do go to graduate, you'll be able to say that you've got this this work experience on your resume, and that will be really helpful. And in addition to the part-time work experiences, you're also allowed to work for up to 3 years full-time upon graduation from a Canadian university. So if you're looking to either immigrate to Canada or you just want to get some more professional international work experience before you go on to another country or return home to work, you're going to be able to have that opportunity here in Canada. So that's something that we're really proud of that our country offers to international students, which is fairly unique from a lot of other places in the world. I've got another question coming in here. Someone's saying, does University of Alberta offer entrance exams for international students who do not meet the admissions requirements? No, unfortunately, there's no entrance exams. If you don't meet the admissions requirements, there's just not really a way for you to get into the university. You either have to upgrade your high school. You can do that in a high school in Canada if you would like. Or the other opportunity is to consider going to one of the community colleges in Canada, or preferably within the province of Alberta. And then there are a number of colleges that have transfer options for students. So whether you're an international or domestic student, they will have university equivalent programs that will allow you to transfer those credits to the university. And you can actually look those up on the Alberta Transfer Guide. They actually have a list of courses that are transferable. So if you want to try that route as well, that could be a potential way that you can get into the university. Someone would like to know about how to use bear tracks. So just a briefing. I'm not exactly sure what information you would like to know, but really what Bear Tracks is about is that it's kind of a one-stop shopping place for you to be able to get information about your scholarships. I believe even a copy of your early admission letter is now being posted to Bear Tracks. You can pay for your tuition on Bear Tracks. You can track the status of your application using Bear Tracks. So if you have applied and you've sent in some documents and you're wondering, what's happening, there's often you're going to see acknowledgments of your documents having been received when an admissions officer has actually processed it. You're going to see some comments from time to time. So sometimes there will be comments on things like why you're being asked to submit certain information, or why you may not have been considered for a program. So for example, if your average was too low, oftentimes that information will be made available on your Bear Tracks account. So it's actually a really helpful way for you to get a lot of information about your own program or about your own application. Another thing that you can do too is you can even change your own personal information. So sometimes, for example, I'll have students moving, maybe they live in one country and they're going home for the summer, and they'll email me and say, hey, can you change this? and I actually can't physically change it because I don't have permission to access that part of our system in Veritrax. So that's something that you can do. You can go into your own Veritrax account and you can actually change that information so that any information that the university might be physically mailing to you, you'll be able to get at the address where you are residing at that point in time. So I hope that answers your question. If you did need some more clarification, feel free to let me know, either in this chat box here for me to answer live or in one of the chat sessions with some of our staff who are currently in the live chat boxes right now. So this person says, can they do the bridging program if they're a student who has completed a degree in another university, or is it just for high school students? I do believe that you can still do that if you have taken a degree already. Since I'm not entirely sure, actually, if you go to the bridging program page, you will, I believe there's an email address there for the bridging program advisor. I think the email address is bpadvisor@ualberta.ca, if I remember correctly. So you could actually ask them directly just to ensure. But as far as I understand, you can still be considered for the bridging program, even if you already have some post-secondary or an entire post-secondary degree. So someone maybe has just logged in recently and didn't get the information on our residences. So I'm just going to go back to that slide and let you know that we do have 11 different residences. And as I mentioned earlier, we have different types of rooms. So we've got shared and private accommodations, and we've got anything from a dorm style that includes a meal plan, it is fully furnished, all the way to an apartment style, which is not furnished at all, and where you would be doing all of your own cooking and things like that. And there's different costs associated with them, so you could go to the residence website and find out more information about how much they each cost and what are the different types of residences. And they also have virtual tours as well. I think all of the residences now have 3D virtual tours, so it does give you like a good sense of what the residences look like or what the rooms look like on the inside. For those of you that are, maybe not really able just to travel to Edmonton just to go on a campus tour. Although we would love if you did, but we definitely understand that that's not always possible. Someone says that they were told that there would be that they would have to take a test once they reach the campus, and wants to know if that's true. No, the good news is that's not true. I'm not sure who gave you that information, but that is not correct. We base all of our admissions on your high school grades, your final results. So whether you have a national exam in your country, if you're in an IB AP program, SAT results. Those kinds of things we use, but once you're at the university, there's no sort of general university exam that you need to take. Obviously, you'll have exams in your classes, but yeah, there's no general university exam. So I'm not sure where that person got their information, but that isn't correct. So I'm glad that you asked that, so that you weren't kind of worried and being misinformed by somebody. So someone wants to know if tuition can be paid in full or in installments. It can actually be made in installments. Now, there's not a huge variety of options for the installments. It's only 2 installments that we actually allow. So you have until the last banking day of September to pay for all of your year's tuition or for the first semester. And then if you do it term by term, then you would have until the end of the last banking day in January to pay for your second semester. So you do have the option to pay in 2 installments if you would like. And then someone wants to know if the U of A looks only at the overall band score for IELTS. We don't. We also consider the individual band scores as well. So the band score needs to be at least 5.0 on each band, with a total overall score of 6.5. And that's actually the same for the TOEFL exam as well. So if you take the internet-based TOEFL, we do actually need you to score at least an 86 with no less than 21 on each section. Okay, so I don't see any new questions at the moment. Here's another one that's just coming in. So yeah, someone wants to know if an international student can acquire a green card after completing school. Well, so in Canada, so again, I guess I could say the answer is yes and no. Canada doesn't actually have anything called a green card. It's different from the US. it is possible for you to apply for a work permit after you graduate from a program in Canada. So if you've done, whether it's a bachelor's, a master's, or a PhD, as long as you've completed a program that was at least 2 years in length, you'll be able to work for up to 3 years in Canada. Now, during that time that you're working, it is possible for you to apply for what we call permanent resident status, and that's the equivalent of the US's green card. So as a permanent resident, it basically gives you all of the same access to the country and healthcare, and I guess I shouldn't say healthcare because Alberta healthcare is free, even for international students, but I guess basically all the rights and responsibilities kind of thing that you would have other than voting. I think that's really the only thing that you can't do with a permanent resident status. And then once you have permanent resident status, obviously at that point, if you comply with the rules of that and whatnot, you can then qualify for immigration. So I'm not a qualified immigration advisor, so that's about as much information as I can really give you with any sort of level of certainty. But if you actually look on the Citizenship and Immigration Canada website, you will be able to get more specific information about how that works, how you can apply, and how to qualify for those kinds of things as well. So yeah, definitely that's something you can consider. Okay, so for those of you that may have logged in and are interested in potentially graduate programs or masters and PhDs, as I mentioned, this really wasn't directed toward those types of inquiries. It's mainly just because with our graduate programs, the way that it works in Canada, it's quite different from the way that a lot of other countries work. There's not really one set of criteria that allows you to get into all of the graduate programs. They vary a lot by program. For example, some of our programs actually have deadlines and some really don't have any deadlines at all. Some require you to identify and secure a supervisor in advance and some don't. Some have multiple intakes per year and some only have one. So there's it so varies by program that it's very difficult to create any sort of comprehensive set of information, whether it's a publication or a presentation, with all of that information housed in it. So the best thing that you can do is actually to go directly to the program website. So for example, if you're interested in engineering, go to the engineering website. You'll be able to click on different departments and find the information that you need listed on the website. They'll be able to tell you things like the minimum GPA requirements, the format that they need you to submit your application, where you can send that. So they'll give you all of that type of information right on the website. So if you are interested in that, I would say go directly to the department website. Usually if you email me or someone at our office, that's kind of what we direct you to do as well. We can give you the direct links, but there's not really a whole lot of information that we can provide ourselves. And it's also because our office doesn't actually deal with the applications either. So as a recruitment office, we would never, we help to market the university and we are there to help give you information, but we would never actually see an application come through our office, nor would we, process any documents. We don't actually have any role to play in the admission cycle or the process. So we're not really able to really help you a whole lot. So we would rather that you go and contact those departments directly, because they're the ones that actually do all of that, all the processing and things like that. And they'll be the most qualified to give you the kinds of information that you needed to help answer your questions more accurately than we can. I should just say that the general website for the grad studies is quite easy. It's grad studies, gradstudies.ualberta.ca. So that's a general website you can go to help find more information about scholarships and funding and all that sort of thing. Let's just see here. There's a few more questions coming through. I'm just going to organize these here. Someone's asking if having a band score of 6.5 or above assures the person of fulfilling the English proficiency requirements. Yes, it absolutely does. So as long as you've got that 6.5, and if you do have the minimum of 5.0 on each band, that's guaranteed to meet our English proficiency requirement. So we don't change that, after we have so many applicants. We're like, oh, well, too many of them, now we'll increase that. We don't do that. Once it's set for the year, and that's not going to change. So you don't have to worry about that aspect. And And someone's asking if there are scholarships for those with sports talent. We kind of do. We don't necessarily offer the scholarships based on the sports talent. Like, let's say, you are a champion soccer player at your high school. We won't just give you a scholarship because of that. But if you were to actually join our soccer varsity team, if you tried out for that and you actually made the team, then you would be eligible to potentially receive a scholarship through the team. So my understanding is that there aren't tons of scholarships available for that, but they are possible and they do exist. And if you are interested in looking into that option, you can actually contact the soccer coach directly to find out about tryouts. Tryouts for our varsity teams do typically happen toward the end of August, so you don't have to worry that if you're not in the country, which, obviously at this point in time you would probably have no reason to be here, you don't have to worry that you're not going to make the team because you've missed tryouts. They actually do hold them toward the end of the summer so that those people who are from out of the country or from out of town would have a fair chance of actually getting access to or being able to be considered for the teams. Someone's asking if a student from Science Without Borders can do disciplines of different courses. So could they take computer science or psychology? To be quite honest, I'm not entirely sure because I haven't, in my region, I don't really cover the students who are part of the Science Without Borders program, but we do have staff in our office who do cover that. So if you go into our live chat or if you send us an email directly to welcome@international.ualberta.ca, just let us know that same question, and then we'll be able to forward your question to the appropriate person who actually will be able to answer that question for you. Yeah, because I'm not entirely certain how that works, and I don't want to give you any wrong information and make promises that might not be able to come true. The person wants to know if they're going to be considered automatically for the bridging program if they don't meet the minimum English requirements. And yes, you actually are. So if you did meet all of our other requirements, but you didn't meet the English language proficiency requirement, you will actually automatically be considered for the bridging program. If you already think, however, that there's a high probability that you won't get the minimum English score and you haven't applied to the university yet, when you do submit your online application, you'll notice that there's a box that allows you about 500 words that you can submit any information that you want to include with your application. It's not meant to be an essay, so don't worry that, like a U.S. university, they'll often require a personal statement or an essay with reference letters. We don't require any of that, and in fact, we would prefer that you not give us that type of information. But if it's something such as, I would like to be considered for the bridging program, you could definitely include that information just to guarantee that there's no shadow of a doubt that you really want to come to the U of A and are willing to go through the bridging program in order to get into the university. So feel free to include that kind of information. If you have already applied and you didn't include that information, don't worry about it. You'll still be considered automatically, but just in case you need that extra reassurance, you can definitely consider that. Let's see the next question. So yeah, this person says the deadline for documents is August 1st and the semester starts in September, and will that be enough time to process the visa? Generally, it will not be. So what I would highly recommend that you do is that you allow yourself to be considered for what we call early admission, and that's our equivalent of conditional admission. It's just a different terminology that we use. Early or conditional admission is based on your grade 11 final marks. So if you were to apply today or tomorrow, you could submit your grade 11 final marks immediately and be considered for early admission right away. And that's way by the time if you do receive early admission, you'll have sufficient time to apply for your study permit. The August 1 deadline is really intended for your final documentation. So if you feel that there's a very good chance that your grades have gone down and that you would not get final admission, you may want to wait until that time to determine if you're going to get final admission. But if your grades are generally still the same, if not better than what you had in grade 11, then by all means submit your application for your study permit. Don't wait for any period of time, and you should be okay in terms of the timing factor. The next question has to do with jobs, and they're just wondering, what are the chances of getting jobs after completing the program at the U of A? It actually really depends on the industry. So if you consider, for example, that you graduate from a program such as philosophy, there's not really a lot of companies that are looking for philosophers. That may or may not be surprising to you. But if you're looking at something such as engineering or a business type of degree or those types of opportunities, those do tend to be more readily available. You can actually go to the Alberta Learning Information Service. It's ab.ca, and you can learn more information about job prospects in different industries, and that would be really helpful for just kind of getting some information. And the Canadian government website also offers that as well, so you can get information about labor market trends to see what types of job opportunities are available. And a person wants to know if they need to be admitted before applying for housing. Definitely not. All you need to have is your student ID number, and as long as you have that, you can apply for housing. And I'll just quickly answer the last two questions, and then I'll have to log out because my session will end. But someone wants to know more about residences. So living in residence is really, really safe. There's security in all of the buildings and stuff, and there's different security measures to make sure that the residences stay safe. But if you don't apply for residence before the April 30 deadline, you won't be guaranteed a room. You'll be put on a waiting list. So in that case, you may or may not get a room, and you may want to consider looking at living outside the campus. But as I mentioned, there is a lot of housing very close to the campus, so it's not necessarily the end of the world if you don't get a spot. So again, I do thank you guys all for participating today and for asking tons and tons of great questions at the end. As I mentioned before, I'll just quickly go back to the page here with our email address. Sorry about that. It's this one here. So if you do have any more questions, you can always email them to us or continue to live chat with us, and we can answer them in person over the internet. So have a great day, evening, morning, night, wherever you may happen to be, and we hope to connect with you and see you on campus very soon.